Have you ever felt completely drained, not just physically, but emotionally? You wake up already tired, small tasks feel overwhelming, and even things you once enjoyed now seem like a burden. This is not simple exhaustion. This is emotional burnout. It creeps in silently when we push ourselves beyond our limits without practicing self-awareness or emotional regulation. Emotional burnout is not a sign of weakness, but rather a signal from your mind and body asking you to pause, to reassess, and to reconnect with yourself. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to confuse burnout with stress. Stress usually has a clear cause, like preparing for an exam or meeting a work deadline, and often decreases when the task is over. Burnout, however, lingers even when tasks are done. It's a deeper state of depletion that impacts your mental health, your relationships, and even your sense of identity. With burnout, you may feel detached, emotionally numb, or trapped in a cycle where nothing feels like enough. To start healing, the first step is cultivating emotional intelligence. This means acknowledging how you feel without judgment and understanding the difference between emotions versus feelings. Emotions are natural responses in the body, like frustration or sadness, while feelings are the labels we attach. I am failing, or I am not strong enough. When you learn to separate the two, you begin to realize that burnout does not define who you are. Recognizing burnout is actually the first sign of personal growth. It takes courage to admit that you are not okay. It takes strength to stop pretending and start listening to yourself. To overcome emotional burnout, we must first understand why it shows up in our lives. Burnout rarely appears overnight. It builds slowly, like drops of water filling a glass until it overflows. The truth is, many of us live on autopilot, constantly saying yes to tasks, responsibilities, and even relationships that drain us. Without self-awareness, we ignore the early warning signs, fatigue, irritability, lack of motivation, until our minds and bodies force us to stop. One of the main causes of burnout is ignoring our emotional boundaries. We push ourselves because we think we should be stronger, more productive, or more available to others. This perfectionist mindset may lead us to believe that resting is failing. But in reality, neglecting rest and reflection damages our mental health and robs us of the capacity for personal growth. Another root cause is emotional overload. Every day we process countless emotions, ours and those of others. Without emotional intelligence, we often fail to notice which emotions belong to us and which ones we are absorbing from external pressures. Confusing emotions versus feelings can create chaos. What starts as stress becomes shame. What begins as sadness becomes hopelessness. Over time, this emotional buildup exhausts us internally. Cultural and social expectations also play a role. We are often praised for being busy and criticized when we slow down. The good news is that once we understand why burnout happens, we can start breaking the cycle. One of the most empowering ways to deal with emotional burnout is to recognize it early. Burnout does not announce itself with flashing lights. It whispers through small and often overlooked signs. By paying attention with self-awareness, you can prevent deep exhaustion and protect your mental health. The first sign is constant fatigue. This is not the kind of tiredness that goes away with one good night of sleep. It's feeling drained even after resting, waking up with no energy to face the day. Your body is signaling that your emotional reserves are running low. Another sign is emotional numbness. You stop feeling joy even for the things you used to love, or you detach from people you care about. This emotional shutting down is a way your mind tries to protect itself from overload. Yet, without emotional regulation, it may isolate you further. Irritability is also a strong red flag. When small issues trigger big reactions, your system is overwhelmed. You may not be angry at the situation, but at your inability to cope with the constant internal tension. Distinguishing emotions versus feelings is crucial. Your emotion may be stress, but the feeling you label it with becomes frustration or guilt, which deepens the burnout cycle. Recognizing these signs is not about labeling yourself as weak. Practical strategies to heal from emotional burnout. Emotional burnout is a state of chronic psychological stress and fatigue, marked by emotional exhaustion, detachment, and a sense of reduced accomplishment. It often stems from demanding work environments, caregiving roles, or even significant life changes that exert continuous emotional demands. Once recognized, the journey to recovery becomes a deliberate process of restoring balance to one's mind, body, and emotions through incremental, intentional actions. The initial step towards healing from emotional burnout involves purpose-driven rest. While adequate sleep is crucial, rest transcends merely clocking in sleeping hours. It requires deliberate interruptions from mental stimuli, scheduled periods of stillness and tranquility, where one can disconnect from the constant cacophony of demands and distractions. This type of rest allows the nervous system to recuperate, fostering emotional regulation and resilience. Establishing and maintaining boundaries is another fundamental strategy. Burnout frequently arises when individuals consistently prioritize others' needs over their own, often saying yes to demands that deplete their resources. Practicing deliberate self-awareness to identify tasks or relationships that excessively drain one's energy is pivotal. Boundaries, rather than serving as an expression of rejection, function as safeguards for well-being, permitting individuals to allocate emotional resources wisely. Reintroducing elements of joy into daily life is vital. Engaging in activities that spark happiness, whether reading a book, painting, taking a walk, or enjoying music, injects moments of playfulness and joy, which are integral to personal growth and creative renewal. These small acts are far from being trivial pursuits. They serve as crucial sources of emotional energy and replenishment. Moreover, addressing physical health through proper nourishment becomes fundamental in this process. Overcoming emotional burnout is not simply about returning to normal. It is about creating a life where you no longer abandon yourself to meet endless demands. Burnout can become a turning point, a call to build deeper self-awareness and practice true emotional intelligence. When you acknowledge your limits and learn from them, you step into a new level of personal growth. The journey through burnout teaches resilience. You begin to recognize the difference between emotions versus feelings, understanding that exhaustion is not a personal flaw but a signal. Through emotional regulation, you learn to pause before reaching the edge, to breathe, and to return to balance rather than collapse. This is not weakness. This is emotional mastery. Imagine a life where you no longer push yourself to the breaking point, but instead honor cycles of work and rest. Imagine pursuing goals not out of guilt or fear, but from clarity and joy. This is possible when you transform the lessons of burnout into wisdom. Your mental health becomes stronger because you respect it as part of your daily priorities, not as an afterthought. Burnout can remind you of something simple yet powerful. You are human. And being human means you need care, compassion, connection, and balance. From this truth, you can create relationships with healthier boundaries, careers built on purpose, and lives fueled by sustainable energy. So, let this moment be a reset. Ask yourself, what is one small change I can commit to today that will protect my energy and nurture my growth? That single step is more powerful than waiting for the perfect plan. Remember, dealing with emotional burnout is not just about survival. It is about transformation. It is about rising again, stronger, kinder to yourself, and ready to live with presence and purpose.